What's up everyone, WizardKen here with another Xbox One World of Tanks video. Today we're going to be talking about armor-piercing rounds and why I only use armor-piercing rounds in majority of my tanks. Now there are some tanks I don't use armor-piercing rounds. I use like the Hesh rounds and the Death Star and different things like that. But majority of my tanks I use armor-piercing rounds, and I want to explain why I do this. Because a lot of you guys in the live streams or even commenting on some of my videos ask me, why are you only loading up all armor-piercing rounds? Why don't you have some HE rounds or some premium rounds just in case you need them for different tanks? Now, there is a reason to the madness why I do this, and it actually has made me a better tanker. I think it has, and hopefully it might actually make you a better tanker if you've been struggling with certain tanks and stuff like that. Now, before we get into this, I would like to apologize for the last couple of days not uploading any World of Tanks videos. The weather has been changing so much from hot to cold that it's been screwing up my voice. I did live stream with the bearded guys the other day, but I wasn't as active in it as I usually am because my throat was just killing me. I was clearing it all the time, and it's actually late in the afternoon right now. I usually do these videos in the mornings, but I just couldn't get my voice to sound like it is right now, and it hurts right now to even do what I'm doing. So but I really wanted to get another World of Tanks video out there for you guys. So without further ado, let's talk about this. Now, before you guys jump on my back and like, WizardKen, you're playing it all wrong, you're supposed to have different ammunition on your tanks. Yes, World of Tanks is not designed for you just to run one style of ammunition. Now, you can do it like I've been doing it for years and years, but you don't have to run it this way. The right way to be running any tank would be putting some armor-piercing shell in there, 10 to 15 HE shells, and then maybe 5 to 10 premium rounds. That would probably be your best bet so that you can handle any tank that comes against you. But like I said, there's a means or a reason to my madness for running only armor-piercing shells. Now, what is an armor-piercing shell? A lot of you guys that are experienced tankers are like, oh, that's common sense. I'm trying to talk to the new guys that are just jumping in the World of Tanks, especially since it just came to PlayStation 4. There's a lot of guys that don't understand what these shells do and different things like that. So let's just talk about it really quickly, and then we'll jump into talking more about why I run armor-piercing shells. Anyways, so an armor-piercing shell is exactly what it means. It's supposed to be used against heavily armored tanks so that your round can actually penetrate the armor that you're shooting at and be able to explode inside the tank, doing damage to the people or the components inside and stuff like that, and doing massive damage. Now, HE shells are for more lightly armored tanks or open top tanks or some stuff like that. Very lightly armored vehicles, we'll just say it like that. For instance, the Waffle Off Panzer IV. I should use an HE shell to shoot at the turret of this tank because it will do tons of damage. There's no armor up there, and I'll be able to take down the hit points very quickly. HE shells actually do a decent amount of damage, but less penetration. Armor-piercing rounds do a decent amount of penetration, but less damage, or average damage. Pretty much your armor-piercing rounds are your just average rounds. Your HE rounds do less, like I said, less penetration, a lot more damage. So you want to use those against usually a lot less armored vehicles. And then your premium rounds, the premium rounds vary of what they can do. Sometimes the premium rounds are kind of like on the armor piercing rounds, but they just do more penetration, if that makes sense. Or sometimes they might do a lot more damage and a little less penetration, but more penetration than the HE round, if that makes sense. Anyways, there's tons of different premium rounds that different tanks get, but you'll always get armor-piercing rounds or HE shells for majority of the tanks that you run. So, but anyways, enough talking about that. Let's jump into why I use armor-piercing rounds. Alright guys, so let me explain why I started using just armor piercing rounds. So when I first started playing World of Tanks, a lot of my buddies were telling me about the different types of rounds, the armor piercing, the HE, and also the premium rounds that I could use on my tanks. And once I heard about the premium rounds and how well they could do against tanks, I was like, shoot, why don't I just use them all the time? So I would load out my tanks with just premium rounds. I would load them out and I would go out there and kick ass. You know, I was killing tanks left and right. I would win games, I would lose games, just like I do now, but I was kicking ass. No matter what I did, I was destroying tanks left and right. But the problem was, is every time I'd get back to the garage, I would be barely making any silver. It was, you know, it might be maybe 5,000 silver or 10,000 silver. Or I would be making, you know, no silver. I would be like negative 5,000 or 10,000. And the problem was, is that even though I might have had the experience points to move to the next tank, I definitely did not have the silver to be able to move to the next tank because I was spending all that silver on premium rounds. You know, there were some tanks that I was spending 40,000 in silver just to run premium rounds, where if I would have ran regular rounds, it would have cost me maybe 10,000 or 5,000. You know, it wouldn't have cost me as much. So I decided after that, okay, I'll go 50-50. I'll go armor piercing rounds and I'll go 50 premium rounds. So that when I run on my premium rounds, the rest of the rounds are just going to be straight up armor piercing rounds and won't cost me as much. Which, in effect, it did work. I was saving a lot more money. And I was able to unlock tanks a little bit easier because I had the money for them. But I was still running into one problem. So, I'm in a tank, and I'm shooting all premium rounds at another tank. And it was going great. I'm destroying this tank. You know, but I've run out of my premium rounds because I, you know, of course, cut my premium rounds in half. So now I had to switch to my armor piercing rounds. And the problem was, is I was shooting these same tanks in the same exact spot that I was with the premium rounds, but I was bouncing. I'm like, what the fuck's up with this? And my buddies are telling me over the, you know, the thing, you need to find their weak spots. You need to shoot at their weak spots. And I'm like, well, where the hell's their weak spot? Because this is where I was shooting with the premium rounds. But now I'm bouncing with armor piercing shells. I'm like, what the hell is going on? That's when they started explaining to me that this game is not about just going out there and shooting at everybody and just using the most expensive rounds on everybody. This game is about actually learning your enemy tanks, learning your own tank. It's good and its bad sides. It's learning every single tank out there and exploiting its weakness. Okay? I mean, so that's when it clicked in my head. The only way I'm going to learn how to play this game properly is to sit down and actually use armor piercing rounds only. Just only armor piercing rounds. And let me tell you, it was a struggle at first. It was a hard struggle to use only armor piercing rounds. Because I sat there and I'm like, man, I am doing so shitty. You know, I'm not wasting as much money, but I'm barely killing anybody. I'm barely doing any damage, and I'm getting lucky on half the damage I'm doing. But you know what it made me do? It made me sit down and start looking at the tanks I'm facing. So I would do, for example, if I was in my IS-3, which is a tier 8 Russian heavy tank. We'll just say I would take that tank and I would study it. And then I would study all the other tanks that I would, you know, possibly run into when I was playing the game. So that would mean I would play, or I would read up on like Tiger 2s. I would read up on regular Tigers. So anything from tier 6 all the way up to tier 10, I would try to study up on. Now I couldn't learn every single tank out there, but what I would do is I would study the most common ones that I've run into, like Tigers, Tiger 2s. You know, I ran into a couple of IS-7s and different things like that. I would just study up on the ones that I would see the most. And then from there, I would expand out a lot more. I would expand to looking at other tanks that I haven't seen before, or I don't see as often. And what was happening is I was learning all the weak spots. Now, the problem with World of Tanks right now is that if you look at, if you hit Y in your garage on a specific tank, you know, to open the details on it, it'll tell you, like, for instance, the VK4502B has 200 armor on the front of the hull, 100 on the side, 100 on the rear. And then it's got 252 thickness on the turret itself, 160 on the side, and 160 on the rear. Pretty thick tank. Now, you were thinking, okay, it's gonna have 200 armor everywhere on that tank. Well, not exactly. There's certain spots on this tank that do not have that 200 thickness. And that's when I started learning to use a tank inspector. You can find them online. There's a free website that you can use that does tank inspectors. And the cool thing is, I was learning that, okay, I have a Waffle Off Panzer IV, which is a Tier 9 German tank destroyer. It does over 276 penetration. But when I'm fighting against a VK4502B, I'm still bouncing off of it. Why am I bouncing off of it? It only has 200 armor on the front. That's when I started learning, okay, the angle of the armor also comes into effect. So this is where we get into the effectiveness of the armor as it's angled. So you take that 200 thickness of armor, and then you add in there the anglement of the armor, which equals out to your the effectiveness of your armor. And so what was happening is I was finding out that even though this tank is only 200 thickness of armor, because of how well it's angled and how well these people are playing this tank and angling themselves, it was making it very difficult for me to even damage them, because the effectiveness of that armor was outweighing the penetration of my shells. So I was bouncing off of this tank left and right, left and right. So this made me sit down and find other places to destroy them. For example, the E100. You know, if someone angles that one pretty well, or the E75, we all know that thing's got some trolling armor if it's angled right and stuff like that. You'll bounce and bounce and bounce. Usually the only thing you could shoot at is the commander's hatch on the top. But I found out within studying this tank and looking into it that the very front left and right rotor, or circular tire, I don't know what they're exactly called, that holds up the first part of the tracks of the tank. If you shoot them, you can track them, plus damage them. Now sometimes you'll just get a track, but you can take some hit points off of them. So what did I start doing? When these guys are angling too much, you know, their upper plate and their lower glacis are angled too much and I can't pin them with the Waffle Off Panzer IV, I'll start shooting them in the in that first round track area. And I will damage them every single time. But I wouldn't have learned that if I would have kept using the premium shells. I would have been like, huh, I'm just knocking, you know, killing these guys. And even then, I might have still bounced. Some premium rounds, you'll still bounce off of some of these tanks. And that's where you need to learn how to fight these things. Now, the other thing that I've been told too is that a lot of you guys are saying, well, just carry a couple premium rounds just in case you run into trouble. Once again, this is where I like using just armor-piercing rounds, because if I run into trouble, that means I need to learn this tank, and I need to learn how to destroy the tank I'm going against. It really does mean that to me. And, for example, one of my buddies was telling me that he was in a Waffle Off Panzer IV, and he had a mouse coming after him. And he's like, oh, dude, I kicked this guy's ass so quickly. You know, I used all my premium rounds on him. I was able to pen him all the time. And we all know the mouse could be pretty nasty if the player that's using it knows how to use it. Because there's not a lot of areas that you can hit on that tank that are pretty easy. But he's just penning them because he had the premium rounds. You know, which does over 300 something like penetration if I remember right. Which I'm going to check right now before I accidentally tell you something that is completely wrong and negative. Yeah, 352 in the sense of penetration. So that's a huge amount of penetration, and he's just using premium rounds. That's all he's using. It's premium rounds, shooting at this thing and kills it. But he only had like 6 rounds, just enough to be able to kill the guy. So anyways, because the Waffle Off Panzer IV only does about 500 something damage, roughly, roundabout. Anyways, he runs out of it, and the tank's gone. But he didn't care because the tank was already gone. So he's starting to shoot at other people, and another mouse shows up. Same area, coming straight at him. And he's panicking, and he's like, you know, it's bullshit because I ran out of premium rounds and I didn't, you know, I couldn't pen the guy. That's just bullshit. They're too OP. The mouse is way too OP. That's exactly what he told me. The mouse is too overpowered. That's bullshit. The mouse is slow, The mouse, yes, is well armored, but it's slow, and it allows you to do a lot of things to it to actually kill it. For instance, if he would have sat there and studied the mouse when they first came out, all of us saw them when they first came out. A lot of them got killed very easily because people didn't know how to use them right. When people started learning how to use them, everybody thought they were OP. Everybody thought they were OP until they started figuring out how to kill them. Just like the E100 and the E75, that first little track area in the very front of the tank, you could shoot that and pen it and damage it. Very easily. Very easily. So what do against a mouse? I told him. I track the damn thing, and I start shooting in that area. Now, it's 50-50 whether I'm going to get damage there, of course, because the tracks can always absorb damage, but I'm still damaging him. Also, on his turret, there's, you see the gun mantle right in front, and then on the sides is the armor that is supposedly pretty thick in most areas. But if you would have shot at that guy, at the mouse, in the middle of those two flaps or two metal slots next to the gun mantle, you'll damage him. We'll call them winged area. I don't know what you want to call it, but the side of the turrets in the very front, you can damage him every single shot with that. So right there shows you the mouse is not OP. It's just you got to learn the tank. That's what World of Tanks is about. It's not about just spamming premium rounds. You'll learn how to kill every single tank if you use only armor-piercing rounds. If you learn how to do this, you'll find different spots on every single tank and be able to destroy them easily without having to sacrifice tons of silver because you're using premium rounds. Because I know a lot of you guys have sat there in a live stream and you're like, oh, WizardKen, I would have killed you, but I ran out of premium rounds. You don't need premium rounds to kill me. All you need is armor-piercing rounds, and you need to just know how to kill me. That's why I do my review videos and show you guys where these things need to be hit at. Because you don't need premium rounds to be able to kill somebody. All you need is just armor-piercing rounds and just study. Yeah, you might die a couple of times against this tank before you figure it out. You know how many times I died against a T95 before I figured out how to kill him? Hundreds of times. But you know what? I know how to kill him now. Even if I don't know how to kill him in the front sometimes, or I'm not able to hit him in the front sometimes, I will track that bitch and I will go around him and I will kill him and shoot him in the sides or in the rear. That's how I do it. Playing just armor-piercing rounds will make you such a better tanker because it relies on you learning every individual tank out there. You can't cheat your way through. I'm going to say cheat. It's not a proper word I should be using. But it doesn't make it, simpler or easier to get through a tank you don't know how to get through with a premium round. Armor-piercing rounds make you, or challenge you to be a better tanker. It makes you work harder. So, for instance, I see a T95 coming at me. I'm in my Waffle Off Panzer IV. I'll shoot at this tank. I know my distance and view range is better than his. So what I'll do, I'll track the bitch and I'll move around him, and then I will start shooting him in the side from a distance so that he can't see me. And I keep doing that because I know my armor-piercing rounds can hurt him in the side or in the rear. So just learning these tanks will help you become a better tanker. And armor-piercing rounds make that happen. It'll make you sit there and just learn how to destroy tanks. I'm telling you, if you try this for like a month, you will become a better tanker because you will learn how to destroy all these tanks you're going against. I'm telling you, if you learn how to play this or use just armor piercing, you'll be a better tanker. Really, it's helped me out so much, and I still use it. I've been playing tanks for what, 2, 3, almost 4 years now. Yeah, 3 or 4 years, something like that. And I still just use armor piercing rounds. Still, to this day. I know how to use the HE rounds and when to use them. I know when to use the premium rounds and when to use them if I just want to get through somebody really quickly. But the thing is I get a challenge out of it. Bubba does the same thing. Roy does the same thing. Everybody uses the same thing that I play with. You know, I don't know if Ronan does or not. I think Ronan and the bearded guys play like, World of Tanks was made to play. A couple of HE rounds and a couple of premium rounds. Me personally, like I said, me, Bubba, Crazy Roy, we all use armor piercing rounds, and we have tons of tanks. We've gotten a tons of tier 10s, and you know, I can tell you this: I spend a lot of money or a lot of silver on buying new tanks. Let me tell you something: Bubba probably has half the amount of tier 10s I do. But you know how much silver he has from just playing these tanks over and over and over again with just the armor piercing rounds? Over 35 million silver. Just from fucking off and just using armor piercing rounds. Like I said, I've been blowing through and buying a lot of tanks, so I never have enough money in the bank. 4 million, I'm surprised I still have that in the bank, because I want to start my next set of tanks soon. But anyways, guys, this has been going on a long time. Hopefully this makes you understand why I use armor piercing rounds instead of heat rounds and premium rounds. It'll make you a better tanker. It really will. I know I rambled off a lot, but hopefully this will help you guys understand everything. Anyways, guys, I'm WizardKen. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like button, leave a comment. Hopefully this will help you. If not, I apologize. And for all the haters out there that like to leave great little comments like, you suck. Yes, I do suck, and I understand that. And go fuck yourself. Bye.